Today I'm going to talk about a natural remedy that can act as a homemade Viagra. And so all you have to do is drink one glass of this per day, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised what's going to happen. And so our topic today is erectile dysfunction. The biggest problem that I see with erectile dysfunction is men go to the doctor, they get diagnosed, and then they get treated. There's really no understanding of what's really behind this condition other than you're getting older and everyone has this, and you're just going to have to manage the condition. What's interesting about erectile dysfunction is that many times, if not most of the time, the hormones are normal when you test them. And many times, men with erectile dysfunction have a high incidence of high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes. They're smokers. And when someone is prescribed a medication like Viagra, and about 30% of the time it doesn't work, and many times there are side effects, like getting gangrene of the penis. Now, that might be rare, but it does happen. And if someone has that side effect and they have to remove the penis, that would be a very severe side effect. So in this video, I want to discuss what's really behind erectile dysfunction. The penis is a barometer of something called endothelial health. Now, what does endothelial mean? It's a single layer of cells on the inside of your arteries and veins and even the lymphatic system. And erectile dysfunction is one of the earliest signs of peripheral artery disease. Now, when we talk about peripheral arteries, we're talking about the arteries in the peripheral part of your body, the legs and the arms. And there's additional clues to know that you have this problem, but you have to realize 50% of the time there are basically no symptoms. But as this problem progresses, you may notice cold feet, painful legs, cramping in the lower legs. You may notice color changes in your lower legs, like your ankles. You see this in diabetes a lot. You might even see like a bluish tint or red rash or extra pigment of the lower part of the leg. You may notice that wounds tend to not heal as fast. You may notice a loss of hair on your lower legs. These are all symptoms of peripheral artery disease, or at least early indicators that there's a problem. So having erectile dysfunction is not really a problem of the penis. It is a problem with something more extensive. Now, the penis is a very sensitive hydraulic organ. Now, what does hydraulic mean? Well, it's something involving a higher amounts of pressure, and in this case, we're talking about blood pressure, in a smaller space to allow movement of something. And so when someone has an erection, they have several things happening that involve these hydraulics. They have an inhibition of the sympathetic nervous system. That's the flight or fight mechanism. That's like the stress part of the nervous system. So under stress, you're not going to get an erection. Now, at the same time, you're also getting an increase of the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is the system that helps you relax, helps you recover. And so the parasympathetic also primarily dominates digestion and sleeping. This could also explain why some men can get an erection in the middle of the night, okay, but not during the day. And also with an erection, you have an increased blood flow, and then you also have something called increased nitric oxide. Nitric oxide increases the blood flow, vasodilation, and it allows you to actually achieve an erection. And the same things that affect peripheral artery disease affects this nitric oxide. And this would be age, high blood pressure, diabetes, being overweight, stress. Now, there's another enzyme that, it's probably not important to know, but it's just the mechanics of how Viagra works. And it's an enzyme called PDE2. And so Viagra inhibits that enzyme. Now, your endothelial layer. How can you heal that and allow that part of your vascular system to function to be able to restore an erection? Well, it's a matter of fixing the real cause underlying this problem. But in the meantime, there's several things you can do to at least improve this situation. Probably the biggest reason for this problem is a person has insulin resistance because they're on the wrong diet. And so if you really want to correct this insulin problem, okay, which is present in prediabetes and diabetes and even before diabetes, and it's also present in high blood pressure as well as obesity, you need to get on the ketogenic diet for sure. But in the meantime, there are several things that you can do in combination in a drink that can help increase this nitric oxide. Now, there's an amino acid precursor for nitric oxide called citrulline, okay? And the food that has the highest amount of citrulline happens to be watermelon. That's right, watermelon. The thing about watermelon is high in sugar too. So if you are on a strict ketogenic diet, what you can do is you can juice the rind part, including the white part of that rind, okay, and let someone else eat the sweeter part. But we're only going to be recommending 1 cup of this juice, so it's not going to be terribly high in sugar. So citrulline will increase nitric oxide. It will also decrease ammonia, which is good. But there's 2 other things that can increase nitric oxide naturally. The most potent thing is beets, okay, beetroot. Now, if you don't want to juice the beetroot, you can get powder. You can get beet powder. I would recommend organic beet powder, and you can mix 2 teaspoons of that in this mixture. Probably going to have to add like 8 ounces of water with it. But if you have a juicer, might as well just get a medium-sized beet and juice it, okay, with a cup of watermelon juice, okay? Make sure you juice the rind and all. But again, if you're on the strict ketogenic diet, just discard the red part. Now, have you ever read on the back of the label with sausages or bacon and it says there are nitrates in there, okay? And sometimes they have a source of nitrates that come from a natural substance, and that would be celery root. So in other words, celery is very high in nitrates. And so you can juice about a cup of celery juice in this mixture. There are other things you can add to this or substitute, and that would be any of the dark leafy greens like arugula, kale, and even spinach. I wouldn't recommend spinach if you have a tendency to get kidney stones because they're high in oxalates, but for some people, they can do it just fine. But all of the dark leafy greens are loaded with nitrates. So you want to drink 1 glass of this every morning for a period of, 4 to 6 weeks. The next thing you want to do, if you're doing this, is to stop all porn. Okay, there's a condition called porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Out of all the things that can cause erectile dysfunction, porn is probably at the top of the list because it really artificially messes up the whole biochemical process by looking at pictures, and it's just very unnatural. You're going to overstimulate, you're going to deplete your dopamine reserves, and it can lead to a very strong addiction and create a lot of additional health problems. Another thing to do would be nose breathing. I did a whole video on this. When you breathe through your nose, like when you're exercising, maybe not all the time, but if you try to focus on nose breathing, you'll have more nitric oxide. You actually have more oxygen too in the body. And of course, the last thing is exercise, because exercise also increases nitric oxide. All right, so now that you know that, I think the most important thing now is to understand more about this nose breathing technique. And for that information, I put this video up right here.